Hey everyone, welcome back to the studio. It's time for virtual paint night again. So while I'm waiting for people to tune in, I'll introduce myself to those of you who do not know me. My name is Anna, and I have been doing these virtual paint nights for about a month now, ever since shelter in place started. So yeah, I can't believe it's been a whole month already. I'm just kind of counting the weeks with these paint nights. And it's been the highlight of my week too, just being here, sharing the joy of creating, and seeing what all of you guys come up with too. It's been awesome. So yeah, I live in Santa Cruz, California. I have my own creative practice as well. So I create paintings that celebrate nature, wildlife, the ocean, and I share my paintings and sell them at art galleries, art festivals, things like that, exhibitions. And I've been teaching for about 2 years, so I love my in-person classes. They're a lot of fun to connect with people and everything. And yeah, so if you're here, leave a little comment, let me know where in the world you are. I know we have a lot of returning people. You guys are here every week, and it's so awesome to see you guys, see you again and again. I see your paintings after you're finished, and your little faces on the chat screen too. I do kind of see you. So yeah, let me know in the comments. And in the meantime, I'll go over the supplies that I'm going to be using today. I gave you the list in the event listing, so you should be pretty much set already. And yeah, you need a canvas or any kind of surface you're going to paint on. I usually just go with a stretched canvas, but you can paint on a wood panel. You can get creative and paint on like your furniture, a chair, or a waste basket like my friend Liz. So fun. Okay, and then you're going to need acrylic paint. So the colors I have are white. I always use a lot of white to brighten up my colors. And I'm going to be using magenta and yellow to create red for the octopus. If you have red paint, then that's an easy way to do that. But you still want to have some yellow, at least to mix it into the background and add some highlights to the octopus. So yellow paint is good. And I have a dark blue for some of the shadows in the background. And we can also mix that in to get some shading in the octopus as well. And I'm going to be using turquoise for the background. So if you have turquoise or similar pigment paint, that'll be handy. If not, you can just do a little mixing and make like a light blue, something like that. Just see what you get, improvise. And you should have a palette for your paint. So I just use like a plastic or paper plate for these. So you can put your colors out. I usually put my white in the middle so I can kind of mix it in every direction. And then you kind of want to go in the color wheel. So pink is next to yellow, or pink is between blue and yellow. The turquoise can go next to the yellow, and the blue is next to the blue. So colors that mix together well, you want to make sure they're kind of together. So that's how I do my palette. I have a couple brushes in different sizes. So a bigger brush is good for filling in large areas of the canvas. A medium brush is good for getting medium-sized areas filled in and also creating some texture. And a small brush is good for the detail work at the very end. And you should also have a water cup for rinsing your brushes off, and something to dab and dry your brushes off on. So I just use a rag that I can wash and reuse, or you can use paper towels, whatever you got is good. Yeah, so that's all our supplies. Pretty simple. Hopefully you guys are all set. And if you're using a different medium, I know some people tune in with watercolors or color pencils, crayons, whatever you have. You can still follow along. The techniques will be a little bit different, but like the sketching instructions and everything, they'll cross over pretty easily. So let's see who we've got here. Got a pretty big group. I see 35 people watching. That's awesome. We have Leslie, hello. Laura from Tustin. Patty, hello. Amanda from San Lorenzo, California, right near San Leandro and Hayward. Welcome back. Kathy is here. Angelina from Petaluma. Selena, hello. Lori, the Panos family from Kamas, you're here. Awesome. And Stacy's here, and Erica and Dylan. It was so fun teaching you last night, Dylan. She's taking a watercolor class with me. So also, if anyone wants private lessons right now or you're home, let me know. We can do that virtually. Can set it up. Cassandra is here. Okay, and Caitlin from San Diego. Wow, all over California. That is so cool. Yeah, and if you didn't catch the beginning, my name is Anna, and I live in Santa Cruz, California, and that's where I create and teach classes and stuff. So I've been doing these virtual paint nights for like a whole month now. And we have one more scheduled for next Friday, and then we'll see. I'm really anxious to hear what happens on May 3rd, if they're going to extend this or if we'll be able to start doing things again. I'm kind of anticipating more staying at home. So we'll see. We'll see how it looks. If that's the case, then you can look forward to more of these virtual classes. And we got a Jessica from Sacramento. Welcome, guys. Okay, so I think we can begin now. I'm gonna move this octopus for reference back here so we can kind of see him still. And I might bring him out every once in a while just to refer to for our finished piece. And so if you haven't done something like this before, basically the way it works is I'm going to go through a step-by-step process from beginning to end and walk you through the steps to create the finished piece. And we'll practice color mixing and brush control techniques as we go. So you'll be learning how to paint. It's the best way to practice, is the best way to learn. I mean, it's just to practice and create paintings as much art as you can. You get better and learn new stuff every time. Okay. So I'm going to start with a medium brush to map out the outline of the octopus. And the way we're going to draw him is we're going to just break it down into simple shapes. So you might like initially want to just draw a circle for the head, but it's actually, we're going to do a square and then a half circle. So I'll show you guys that. It's a little different. If you really look at an octopus, you'll notice they have an interesting shape to them that's not that simple. So I'm going to start in the very middle of the canvas here. You can put a little dot for reference, and I'm using pink mixed with yellow, like an orange paint, so it'll blend in with the octopus fine. You don't want to use something too dark because we're going to be covering up these lines eventually. So yeah, like an orange or red will work. So we start at the center of the canvas, and then we're going to make a little square here. Okay. And then on this side of the square, we're going to make a little half circle to make it round. Okay, and actually we can kind of bring this circle up here, kind of like that, like a square with a circle overlapped, colliding. Okay, because they kind of have this squarish forehead here. Okay, and we're going to use some of these lines to guide our finished painting. Okay, and then the tentacles are going to come down here. You get like a little curve where they start coming up. And then another curve from this area going under the head. And I'll start with these top tentacles that kind of curve into the canvas. So you kind of want to hug the outline of the back of the octopus's head, and just leave a little space in between where the tentacle is going to be and where the head ends here. Okay, and this one's going to curve around to the top and then up, and I'll do a little loop at the end. And then you can turn that into a tentacle by adding another line alongside it with a little point at the end. So that's our first tentacle there. And then we're going to start here. So this one, if you line it up, it doesn't have to be exact, but it should come out like kind of in the middle somewhere here. So you can test that with your brush to see where the tentacle's coming out. Like if it's too low, you might want to just bring it up a little bit. Okay, and this one is kind of like a backwards S. So this one is basically an S shape, and then the other one is just mirroring that. So we're going to go out this way, and then do a little loop here. Okay, and if your lines aren't perfect right away, no big deal, because with acrylic paint you can cover up things that you don't like. It dries really quickly, so it's fixable if you get little weird spots anywhere. Okay, let's see, where is our next tentacle? So the next one we can do from down here. And we can just do a little curve here, like a sharp turn, to connect the next tentacle. And this one's just going to go off the canvas with a gentle curve. And then we'll make the bottom line here. And then it kind of curves up towards the head right there. And then we'll do the same thing on this side. So just a little connecting curve, and also going off the page here. Okay, so we've got 4 tentacles. We need to add in 4 more. We kind of fit them in wherever we can. And you want to try to get a little overlapping going. So imagine there's tentacles going like behind and connecting to the body, the base right there. And that's good because it creates depth in the painting too. It makes it a little more realistic. Okay, so I'm going to make 2 more tentacles just at the bottom here, so we can create like a second line here and go off of the canvas. So there's another tentacle, and then same thing on this side. It's good there's like some symmetry to keep it simple, because if you cut it in half, the tentacles are about the same. So that's 6. Now we need 2 more. In these ones, the last 2, I'm going to make them come out of these little middle sections here. So this one in the back is going to just go off the page again. And then the other one is going to curve up, kind of like in a circle this way. Let's see. So we can start somewhere over here, and then leave a little space between these 2. Maybe it makes like a sharper turn, and then comes out behind this tentacle here, and curves around. No, it can get confusing once you have all these lines, but just try to keep it in perspective. If you need to step back and take a minute to figure out where all your lines are and what everything is, you can do that. You can even get a pencil and make little labels, especially with the negative space, because we have little areas in here. You just want to make sure you know which part is the background and which part is the subject. Okay, and then the other line here. And even if you want to connect these lines just to make sure they're consistent and they meet up in the right spot, you can just paint it right over the first tentacle. That's okay, because it's all going to be the same color anyway, so no big deal. Yeah, and if it looks like it needs to go down here too, you can paint it in. Okay, so make sure you count your tentacles and make sure you have 8 of them. If you need to add them in, add more. Okay, we got a few more people. Said hello, Liz Walken. Excited that you're here again. And Jasmine is here. Hello. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so from here, we're going to start on the background first, and then we're going to do the foreground, the subject, second. You tend to want to work from back to front in a painting, just because if you do the background second, it might end up being painted over the subject, which doesn't work, but you want the background to kind of fall behind the subject, so that's why you want to work that way. And so for the background, I'm going to use a bigger brush. And I might alternate also. If you have like these small areas that are kind of harder to fill in with the big brush, you can switch to the medium brush to get a little more control in those tighter spaces. And also with acrylics, I don't know if you guys know this, but you want to make sure you're leaving your brushes in the water, because acrylic paint can dry up on your brushes pretty easily, and then it's really hard to get it off. So if you want to keep your brushes nice, that's how we do it. Okay, so onto the background. I'm gonna start with a base of turquoise, and then I'm gonna be mixing in other colors like the dark blue, even a little bit of magenta and yellow, to create some variation and texture in the background. Thanks, Jasmine, for the nice comment. Appreciate it. Okay, so I'm gonna mix some turquoise and white. It's nice to add white into your paint just to, for several reasons, to brighten it up, to stretch the paint out a little bit. You don't want it like super concentrated color. Maybe you do. If you do, you can do that. Yeah, but I like to mix in some white to get some nice pastel colors. And then I'll just start painting in the background. Take our time with this part. It might take a while. And you want to go kind of carefully along the lines we painted and get as close to them as you can. Yeah, I love these flat brushes. They're so versatile. You can flip them one way to fill in large areas quickly, and then you can flip them the other way to get into tight spaces like this. If you guys have any questions as we go, let me know. Just leave a comment. I'm checking them as we go. Okay, so also for this background, we want to be kind of mindful and maybe do some blending in sections. So like instead of filling in the whole background turquoise, I want to do blending while the paint is still wet, because if it dries out, then the paint's you're not going to get the same texture and mixing as you would if you do it when the paint is wet. So I don't know about you where you are, but in Santa Cruz today it's really hot. It was like 78 degrees, so the paint's drying really fast. So I'm gonna go in right now with some yellow and white, and this area is a little bit brighter, so I'm just gonna kind of brush that in with a crisscross stroke, and I'm not blending it too much because I want to keep that texture of the brush stroke and keep the yellow kind of isolated there. You can even just take some white and brighten up areas. And maybe even try a little bit of the dark blue and see how that looks. And I haven't rinsed my brush yet in between all these colors because they all work together really well. You don't really have to rinse your brush. But if you feel like it gets too dark or too light and it's creeping into your background and you don't like it, you can rinse your brush off and start fresh. And it's also good to layer on sections you painted already. So if I do a second coat of paint, even just by adding those additional colors, it'll intensify the color a little bit, and also the canvas won't show through as much. So benefit of layering your paint. Okay, so keeping that nice texture. When you're happy with the first section, then you can kind of spread out with that base coat again and go through the same steps, adding in the highlights and the shadows, creating that texture and variation. I just scheduled our next Friday paint night, and we're gonna stick with the ocean theme and do a mermaid. That's always a really popular one, so I hope you guys will join me for that one as well. It'll be fun, as always. And I've been getting some requests for future paint nights too, so if you guys have any ideas, you can let me know. And either I might have a painting already that kind of fits into that, or I might make some new ones. Okay, I'm gonna get a little darker in this corner here to frame the painting a little bit. So remember to keep that the kind of loose crisscross brush stroke. You really want to see like the bristles of the brush coming out in the paint, and yeah, just be careful not to overblend, but at the same time finding the balance between softening the edges so it's like a smooth transition throughout the background and keeping that texture. Okay, and also like to add in a little pink in here so you get some purple. Just be careful if you're using all three colors and they all mix, all the primaries that is, like the blue, the pink, and the yellow, you will get like a muddy color. So be careful, especially if you have like the blue, yellow, and yellow mix over here, or blue and pink mix over here and the yellow mix. If those collide, you might get some brown going on. If that happens, just stop, let it dry, and then you can paint over it with a second layer in brighter colors. Jasmine says, poppies. We painted poppies a couple weeks ago, the Poppin' Poppies, but I have that recording up. I love poppies too. They're so beautiful. There's so many of them blooming in my neighborhood right now on my neighborhood walks. I love seeing them. They're fun. And I really miss going out like into the wilderness and seeing all the wild flowers. I was looking forward to that. We'll see if we get a chance to see our parks and travel a little bit before the blooms are gone. Okay, don't forget to fill in the little sections here in between the tentacles. And if you're using a canvas, you can paint the edges too. Makes it look nice and ready to hang. Okay, so there's another little bit of a shadow down here underneath the octopus, so I'll just add in some of that darker blue little by little. So in here, I'll darken it up a little bit. So there's kind of like patchy areas here. So there's like a little bit more yellow here, some dark blue here and down here. And you want to just kind of randomly space it out. There's no science to it, but just kind of find balance. Try not to be too methodical with it either. It's also kind of nice to keep the corners and the bottom a little bit darker so you kind of frame the piece and bring the eye into the center of the piece. Jasmine, thanks for watching for a little bit. And yeah, the videos are always up if you want to follow along, but your art is awesome as it is. A whale or a shark? Ooh, good idea. Yeah, I had an idea actually. I have a little whale piece. I don't know where I put it. Oh, I have this whale piece. I thought that would be fun to do around Mother's Day, so we can make little whale families. So that's on the roster for a future paint night. And then this is the mermaid we're gonna do next week. Very fun. Maybe we'll do another like land one mixed in, like a landscape or something. Shark. Ooh, I do have a shark. I don't know if you guys can see it in the corner over there, if that's cropped. But the shark would be fun too. We'll have a whole aquarium after this is over. Okay, got a few more little sections to fill in. Okay, and then just be mindful as you get into like this side, because you've got this tentacle here, so you want to make sure you know which one's the tentacle and which is the background, like I mentioned earlier. Do a little more dark blue in this corner here. Yeah, and if you paint over the lines of the octopus, that's not a big deal, because like I said, you can layer it with paint and cover up any little mistakes. And again, you want to make sure you're getting as close to the lines as you can, so we don't have any white space showing between the subject and the background. You want it to look like it's going behind the guy. Yeah, so you can go back into areas and build up texture and color if you want to kind of bounce around between sections. Just keep in mind if the paint is dry, you're not going to get the same blending as you do when the paint is wet, so you might have to like add in the other transitional colors. Like if you want to brighten this area up, you'll have to add in more turquoise in there. And you can always take a step back and see your painting from a distance, see what you think. Ask your friends for feedback if you've got someone painting with you too. Help each other out. might switch to my smaller brush, the medium one, and add in a little more color into some areas. I really like having just a little bit of pink in these dark blue sections, gets into like a nice purple color, which creates more contrast and makes it more exciting. Just a tiny hint blended into the dark blue areas. And then I'll rinse, and I want to brighten up this middle section a little bit more because I think it's just a little dark, so I'm going to adjust that and go in with mostly white, a little bit of yellow and turquoise. Kind of build that up. It's still dark, so I'm going to rinse and just go with white. See how that goes. So yeah, this is called mixing on your canvas. So there's two ways to mix. You can either mix colors on your palette where you kind of combine little puddles of paint to create your own color, or you can mix directly on the canvas. So if the paint is still wet, you can just take another color like I'm doing and laying it on, and so I'll get a lighter color right there because I'm mixing it with the paint that's already on the canvas. And try to keep it consistent too. So this yellow I have here, I don't want a hard transition to another color on this side of the tentacle. So since it's kind of going behind, I'm going to add in that lighter color on that side too, and probably here as well, to get kind of a smooth transition. And if the paint is dry already, you can employ a different technique called dry brushing. So you can get a pretty cool effect just by brushing, like not loading your brush up with too much paint and kind of brushing it over and layering the paint that way, and you get more texture. It still looks pretty cool. Bunches of clams from Christine, that's a good idea. Yeah, I always find it funny every time I do one of these and try to copy my sample painting, it never turns out the same. And I see that a lot in my students too, like you'll want to make your painting exactly like mine, but it's going to be different because you have your own unique style and methods. So try to embrace that and kind of go with the flow with whatever you're getting. No painting is going to be the same, and that's kind of the beauty of art. So don't get frustrated if it doesn't look exactly like mine. Even my paintings never turn out the same. They're always different. Okay, so I think I'm pretty happy with this background. I'm going to let it dry for a couple minutes, and then we can move into the octopus. Also, I'll let you guys catch up on the backgrounds in case you're still working on them. Give you a few minutes to finish that up. Let's check the time too. I think we're doing pretty good, on track. I've got an hour and a half of recording time on Facebook Live, FYI. So I'll tell you guys some things I have coming up in case you're interested. So next week I'm going to be teaching an intro to acrylic painting class. It's going to be done virtually over Zoom, so you just have to get the supplies and join me. It's going to be Tuesday, Thursday at 5 p.m. for 3 weeks. So we're going to really get into the techniques and the colors and the methods to create your own original piece, and then I'll kind of guide you through your own idea for a painting, and you'll create it throughout that class too. So if painting is something you really want to take up and learn and get better at, then it's going to be a great class for you, especially if you're kind of new to it. These classes are fun, but they kind of just scratch the surface on techniques and stuff like that. But yeah, if you're interested in that, you can send me a message and I'll send you the link to it. Yeah, I'm really excited to do that and to be able to offer that finally. And let's see, I have a daily sale every day on one of my sample works. So I've been doing that on my stories on Instagram and Facebook. So if you're following me, you can check my stories every day around 10 a.m. I have a lot of sample art from teaching classes, and I'm letting it go at pretty affordable prices. So if you want to decorate your walls a little bit with something cool, you can check that out. And then after that, I'm going to do that through the end of the month. And for May, I have a new daily project that I'm kind of brewing up right now. So you can keep an eye out for a daily painting, little bonanza that'll be coming up in May. And let's see, we've got watercolor Wednesdays too. So on Wednesdays we do a similar thing. It's a little bit shorter than the acrylic painting. Next week we're going to paint waves, watercolor waves. One of my favorite subjects to paint, so I'm excited to share that with you. And then on Friday we're going to do the mermaid too. So watercolor Wednesdays, paint night Fridays every week as long as we're sheltering in place. And also I have my Facebook group. So if you're not in the group already, it's you can search for Follow the Sun Art Club. And that's where we're kind of sharing all our paintings that we create after these classes. So it's a cool little community. You can all see what everyone creates and get inspired by each other. And you can also stay tuned for upcoming classes in there. You'll get little notifications and updates. And then the Santa Cruz Makers Market is hosting, they usually do a lot of like local markets, and they're so nice. It's all like really awesome artists, jewelers, creators of all sorts. But they're doing a virtual Mother's Day market next Sunday, May 3rd. So that's going to be all online, probably on Instagram and Facebook. So I'm going to participate in that, and we'll have like a little virtual market, and you can shop from all these makers for something special for your mom or for yourself, if that's the case. Okay, I think that's all of my messages so far. How are you guys doing on the backgrounds? Are you ready for the octopus yet? Should I begin? Let me know in a comment. I'll probably just dive into it anyway, and if you need to catch up later, you can do that whenever you're ready. Okay, so probably going to use my medium brush because it's a smaller space. And similar concept, we're going to kind of lay down a base foundation for the octopus and then build up our texture with highlights and shadows as we go. And there's a little variation. I'll bring this out again. So you've got the undersides of the tentacles, which are kind of light blue, and then we'll layer on the little suction cups on there. And then most of the octopus is just like an orange red. So we can start with the orange part and just kind of leave space for the bottoms of the tentacles. Okay, so if you have red paint, you can just use that, or if you want to make it a different color, feel free to get creative. You can make it any color you want, but I'm going to be mixing magenta with a little bit of yellow to create red, like an orangish red. Maybe mix in a little white just to increase the opacity. So magenta, yellow, and a little bit of white. And just kind of adjust the color. If you feel like it's too pink, you can add more yellow. If it looks too orange, you can add more magenta. And yeah, just play with it until you get a color you like. Okay. Oh, also we need to draw out the eye, so we can kind of make a couple circles here. So right at that transition, where the circle, this side of the circle goes up here, we can make 2 little circles for the eye. So the middle one's going to be like the pupil, and the second one, the bigger one, is like the bulge of the eye coming out. And then they also have a little siphon back here, so we can kind of map that out real quick. So that's kind of at the base of the circle coming out from the eye, so that's where they push water out and filter it. And then we can fill in the body. The shapes I just sketched in, I'm going to leave them white for now, just so I can remember where they are, so we don't lose them and blend them in accidentally. And we can go in a little bit later and fill them in with another color, just like a variation of this base color. And here, if you got any like funky lines where you were sketching it out, you can just cover them up, like that square that we painted originally. Let's see, we got a couple of questions here. Kelly asks how long I've been painting. My whole life, and we've been painting this octopus for about a half hour. And the recording will be up if you go to my page. I have all the videos from the previous paint nights and watercolor Wednesdays too. They're all up on my videos tab, so you can find it easily just on my page. And I've been uploading them to YouTube too. So I'm just Follow the Sun Art on every channel. So you can find it there if you want to cast it to your TV or something like that and watch another time. You totally can. We just won't have the same energy of the live interaction. And Andrea, angry face, I don't know if I saw that. And you said you love the painting. Thank you. Okay, so this first tentacle, we'll just kind of go tentacle by tentacle to keep it simple and keep track of which ones are going to have the suction cups and where. So this one's just going to be fully filled in with the orange, except at the very end here, there's a few suction cups there, according to how I painted it previously. Yeah, you can always look up reference photos for inspiration. That's usually what I do, is I'll go on Google and find some cool photographs of the animals that I'm painting, and just tweak them a little bit so you're not like copying the photograph exactly because of copyrights and everything. But it's good just to see the shapes and proportions of the animal. If you want to get realistic with it, of course you can totally stylize and make the creature more abstract. But I've always had a hint of realism in my work, even before I started playing with line work and colors and stuff like that. I love to work from photographs. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can see this, but I left just a little bit of white here at the end of this tentacle. And that's where we're going to paint in like a lighter blue with the little suction cups. Okay, and these two on this side, they're going to be like half and half. So we're going to be seeing the tentacles coming out like on the bottom half of this one and also on this one. So we can just fill in the top half with our reddish orange color. Little details, and it is going to connect when you reach this curve in the middle. It's going to connect to that line, but you just want to leave that white space on the bottom of the tentacle. Does anyone know how many tickles it takes to make an octopus laugh? Let me know if you know the answer. I'm also going to leave space on this one that curves up. The suction cups are going to be on this side, and they're going to kind of curl around on the top at the end here. And if you accidentally color any of it in, you can always layer the white on top. Let's see, I don't think I have any answers to my jokes here, unless they're coming in like delayed. But the answer is Tentacles. You're welcome for that brilliant joke. One of my favorites. So I'm just leaving the whole end of this tentacle white for the background. Oh, Eliana got it. Tentacles equals tentacles. Ha ha ha. Okay. And this one's also going to be a half and half. Little mix. Okay, and these two in the background here, they're just going to be the underside, so we'll leave them white for now. And then we just have this one, that's what I have, and this one back here, the little middle ones sticking out in the background. And those are going to be half orange, half light blue. So you might start to lose these lines, but just kind of keep in mind where you put them, because it's all one color so far, but we are going to do a little shading to create some variation so it looks like it falls to the background. Yeah, and even right now, if you want to get a little dark blue on your brush and just kind of fill that in a little bit, you can create a shadow. Blue is a great color to use for shadows. So there, see how that looks like it's kind of falling into the background now. You can do the same thing on this side if it helps you keep track of everything. Okay. Now I'm gonna paint in this siphon here, adding like a little bit more yellow, maybe a little white for a highlight. This is just the first coat, so we are gonna go over again and brighten up the colors a little bit. I don't know about you, but I can see a lot of my canvas through this, so it'll be really helpful to have a second layer. Okay, and I'll do the same thing for the eye. So just adding a little bit of white to that orange color. Okay, and then we can rinse our brush. Once you have the whole red part painted in. I think I missed part of a tentacle. Make sure you have them all filled in too before we switch colors. Now I'll rinse. Okay, so next we can just mix a pale blue using our dark blue and white. Usually the darker blue, it makes a better shadow. If you use turquoise for the background, I wouldn't use that for the shadows because it's too warm, because it's got some like yellow hues in it. So you want cooler colors for shadows, like purples and blues, things like that. A lot of blue, and yellow is better for highlights to brighten areas up. Okay, so when you have your light blue, even that might be a little bit too dark. Sometimes it's different. If you mix on your palette, a color looks different than when you put it on your canvas. It's all about the context of what's next to it. So if you put your color down and it doesn't look quite right, you can always adjust it. So I'm just going to add a little bit more white here and spread that out. And then we'll fill in these white spaces that we left. Just be careful too, if your paint is still wet, like the orange part, it might blend in with the blue and create a muddy color. So if it is wet, just be really careful when you go along edging that color. And you guys might also want to take a moment to step back and make sure all your lines connect where they're supposed to, because with all these tentacles, 8 of them, it can get a little confusing, just like all the lines everywhere. So just take a look wherever these tentacles intersect. You can kind of even like hold your brush up to make sure the lines are where they are supposed to be, because as you paint, sometimes you might get a little off from the original line. So just to do a little check once you're done filling in the tentacles, and then we'll move on to the next layer. I'm gonna do a little touch up on my background actually, because I think this dark spot looks really funny here. Get some consistency back here. Yes, if you have time and want to touch up any little sections of the background like I am, you can do that now, or you can do it later. You can do that anytime, just adding layers. Okay, yeah, and that gave my initial coat of orange a little time to dry. So now I can go over with a second layer and build up that color and texture a little bit more. We'll do a little bit more shading here to create some dimension in the octopus. So basically I'm just going to start with the same color I was working with before, that orange, and I'm just going to lay on a second coat, and then we'll have some wet paint to do some mixing with. And I'm just going to start with the head here because that's kind of like the big focal point, and then we'll move outward as we go. Okay, so I'll do some highlights on the top of the head here. So you probably don't need to rinse the orange off your brush because it'll blend in nicely. But I'm gonna get some yellow and white mixed together. I'll show you, I got like a little clean corner of my palette, so I just mixed in a little yellow and white. And then I'm gonna blend that in. So you can kind of start with a line up top and then just brush it over a couple times to smooth it out, following the curve of the head. You can even bring it down in here into the shape, and we'll start small and then just kind of build it up as we go. And also on the front of the head here, and you can get into the top of this tentacle too. Just imagine like the light is coming from up top, so all of the surfaces that are facing up that way, they're going to have the highlights, and the shadows are going to be on the bottom parts of the shape. Yeah, and octopi have really cool textures, and they even change color, some of them, to like communicate and stuff. I don't know a whole lot about them, but they are very intelligent and adapted creatures. But it's cool if you like look up images and really notice the texture of their skin. You can get some inspiration probably. But yeah, I've noticed that they have like all these squiggles, so we can do that with another layer and create like some little squiggly lines to give them even more texture. Okay, but for now we're just doing the highlights. Let's see, while I've got this color, I'll probably put a little bit on this tentacle as well. And then get some orange to blend it in. And then we want to get a little shadow under the head as well, so rinse the orange off your brush if you're headed into that part. Dry your brush off, and then I'm going to get a little bit of dark blue. And then just kind of outline the base of the head there and into this, this little circle that curves up. And then same thing, you can just kind of brush softly with long strokes back and forth and get that shadow going, the blending. So yeah, that's one useful technique with acrylic painting is blending. So a lot of times if you put a color down and get like a really hard line, you just want to brush right over the transition line between the two colors and blend the two colors together, and that'll give you a smoother gradient versus like a hard line between your colors. Laura says she just read The Soul of an Octopus. I heard that book was really good. It's on my list of reading material. And the plural of octopus is octopuses. I have heard that fact before too, actually. And then I still find myself saying octopi sometimes, but it is, you're right, it's octopuses. Let me know if you guys have any other fun facts about octopuses. Always fun to learn. Okay, so we can continue with our second layer on the rest of the body. And you might like accidentally get different variations of that base color. So you might have some sections that are a little more yellow, especially if you're mixing and not working straight out of the tube. But that's kind of good. You want to have a little variation in it, so it's not like super flat and has some texture and liveliness to it. I'm going to brighten this section up a little bit too. This little triangle that formed here. So yeah, I'm not doing as many highlights and shadows in the tentacles. That's not super critical. If you do want to make them really rounded, then you can add in some highlights to like the upper surfaces. But I think they're okay looking kind of flat as long as we've got some dimension in the head there. I think it'll be okay. But just go over with that second coat to solidify the colors a little bit more. Yeah, another cool thing about layering is that some colors are just slightly translucent. So since we already painted a shadow in this area, and I'm going over with a second coat, that shadow still shows through underneath. So if you really get into painting, that's one tactic you can employ, is you kind of start with the shadows and the highlights, and that's the structure of your painting. And then as you layer on, those shadows will still kind of show through the other layers. It adds depth to the painting. Okay. And then I'll just go over the eye and the siphon one more time. We can add some highlights and shadows to these shapes. So a little highlight there to kind of define it from the rest of the body, and same with the eye here. Just lighten up the top a little. Let's check that out. Pretty nice. Okay, so we've got a pretty good foundation. Maybe I'll give you guys a couple minutes to catch up if you're still working on that second layer, but all we need to do now is we're going to create a little bit more texture on the octopus. If you want to, you can leave it simple like this if you like it, but if you want to follow along with me, what I did in this piece is I just went in with like these random squiggles to create like this like wrinkly textured surface of the skin. And then we're going to work on the eye. I usually save the eye for the very last part of my painting process, and I do that because I feel like you know, the animal you're painting, it has like a soul, a spirit, so once you like finish the rest of the body and it looks pretty lifelike, then you can do the eye and it really pulls it all together. So I always save the eyes for the last part. And then we have the little suction cups. That'll be fun and meditative, just go along with a bunch of spots. Okay, so first I'll do some of those squiggles. So I've got my little round brush now. And when you're using a little brush, they don't hold a lot of paint, and you want to get a pretty good consistency. I like to get a nice fluid consistency so it's easier to load up more paint and it brushes on smoother. If the paint is too thick and you try to brush it on with a little brush, it ends up like coming off in globs. So I like to just add water to my acrylic paint to thin it down to get it to the right consistency, especially because you're usually using this at the end of your painting session and the paint dries up as you go. So that's a nice way to get it back to a good consistency to work with. And I'm just going to brush on very lightly with the very tip of the brush. If you press the brush down all the way, you'll get really thick lines. That might be a little bit too intense for this. And yeah, how do I do this? It's kind of like my own technique I figured out for creating texture. But basically I'm just scribbling on here, like there's no science to it, just kind of comes naturally. Just go in like different directions, back and forth, up and down, all over the place, like a little chicken running around. And that'll give you a good squiggle. And yeah, the paint is kind of watered down. You're just using the tip of your brush, so the lines aren't super thick, and they don't always connect either. We can bring that into the body as well. Yeah, if you do this and it's not really working out how you like it, you can always brush back over with orange and cover it up and keep it simple. But it's a fun technique to play around with, and maybe you'll get like a really cool effect. Always works out differently for everybody. Okay, some little squiggles there. And I might do the same thing with another color just to create a little bit more variation and texture. So maybe I'll just go in with some pink, like a darker version of the base color, so it's you can still kind of see it, but it's not super contrasty. I wouldn't do this with like black or something like that, but kind of similar colors that will accent this pretty well. So yeah, I think the pink works pretty nicely there. I'll touch up this siphon while I'm here. And the eye. Yeah, I kind of use the scribble technique a lot in my work, and just thinking about when I first figured it out, because I don't think it's like anything that Da Vinci used or anything, maybe. But I was painting a sea hare, which is a giant sea slug. They get to be like this big. And when I was working as a kayak guide, we used to find them during low tide, and kind of like do a show and tell with these giant sea slugs, and they have that same texture to their skin kind of modeled. So I was doing this painting like a long time ago now, when I was just starting out professionally. It didn't end up being a bestseller because I guess not a lot of people know what these sea hares are, but I figured out this technique, and then I always like went back to it. It's cool when you figure out like a way that you paint something, and then you can kind of quickly go to that technique when you're utilizing similar subjects in other paintings. So yeah, I figured out this little technique, the scribble technique, and now I even use it for trees. Like, I don't know if you can see the details of the oak trees in this owl, but I kind of go in with like a scribble line to create the texture of the leaves in the trees, so it kind of crosses over to different subjects across the board. Okay. So we got the squiggles, and now we can do some suction cups. So I'm going to use a medium brush, or you could use a smaller brush, just see what works, what feels comfortable for you, and use that. But we're just going to kind of press down. You can try to get them all in perfect circles. You might find your own way to make them, and feel free to go with whatever works for you. But I try not to make them perfect. I kind of like to go in like, just like quickly and efficiently and create these kind of circles and just fill it in. You can have them vary in size a little bit. You can even add more detail into them if you want. But for today's demo, I'm just gonna kind of quickly paint them in. And usually there's like 2 rows of suction cups, so they're kind of like lined up together, 2 rows. And maybe on these half ones, you can make the circles a little bit flatter, so you'll make ovals essentially, since you're kind of viewing them from the side, and that's how the perspective would be. And I'm just doing this with white paint too, so it shows up against that light blue pretty well. So I forgot to paint in this little section. Fill that in real quick and let it dry. Yeah, I just realized how fast the time is flying. So I have 15 minutes left to do this demonstration. So I kind of go through a little bit faster now and finish up the suction cups and the eye, and we'll do a final outline to complete the piece. And if you are a little bit slower than me, just take your time. You can always watch the recording again afterwards if you need to follow along, or you can just take note of the instructions and use them when you get to it. No rush. and also I just want to say that I am super grateful for everyone's support during these. Just having you guys show up, and I know a lot of you are sharing with your friends and inviting people. And just like interacting with me too, you know, sharing your artwork at the end of the class. I love it. The donations really help me right now because, yeah, most of my business has slowed down, like the art festivals, the in-person classes. So it's really helpful to have that support from you guys right now. And if you do enjoy the class and would like to donate, I'm accepting that via PayPal or Venmo, and I have the info in the event page, I think, but I'll post a comment on the video afterwards and also on the event page, so you'll find it. And if you can't find it, you can just ask me. And also another thing I want you guys to check out is my Patreon. I just launched that in February, and basically it's a membership site for creatives, so there's like podcasters, artists, musicians, and you can support them on a monthly basis. So I have my page set up, and there's different tiers, like financial contributions, and they all have different rewards. So it's not like a one-way thing, you know. You get something for it. So I have some cool perks. The basic one is you get digital downloads, you get a discount code to use in my shop anytime, and first access to my artwork and events and stuff like that. And then I have a goodie box tier that's been pretty popular, so you can get a surprise package of my art every month. And those have been really fun to put together and kind of get creative with what goes with the times and the seasons and everything. And there's also a paint along club, so with that you get a bonus painting tutorial every month. So yeah, a lot of fun. I'll be recording the next one pretty soon. So yeah, check that out, and my Patreon page is patreon.com/followthesunart. Yeah, and again, I'm super grateful. Even if you're just sharing these videos in my page and inviting your friends to the virtual events, that all goes a long way and means so much to me also. So thank you guys. Okay, and now we can get into the eye. So I still have white on my brush. I'm just gonna bring out this circle, this inner circle again with some white paint here. Okay, just like that. And then I'm gonna switch to my little brush. The paint's still wet, so you might get some blending, so you can kind of go carefully, or you can wait for it to dry. And then I'm gonna get some dark blue. And the Octopus, their pupil, it's like a rectangle, not a circle. So basically you're just going to paint a bar across the eye like that. And that bar extends out to here, so you can kind of create a little, you can do some stippling where you're doing really short strokes, but it extends out here. Of course, every species is different, but this one, I guess it's the red octopus. I lose track. Kind of like very specific when I'm actually making these sample paintings, but as I do them more and more, it gets less like a real species. Okay, and then from here, all that's left is the outline. So I'm going to use the dark blue. You can kind of see the difference and then decide for yourself if you want to do the outline or not. So I like to outline my work because it makes it pop out a little bit more and stand out from the background. Yeah, and you can do like partial outlines, like on this one I didn't do anything on the top, but especially like on the bottoms and around the tentacles, it's nice to bring it out. Or you can just keep it simple like this, that's fine too. There's a lot of personal preference, you know, and I'm all about creativity, and you know, we all have our own idea of what looks good, so it's up to you if you want to do the outline or not. But if you do, you can just use the little brush in a dark blue and just go along and define these edges again. don't mix up your lines too. It's kind of easy, especially when you get the tentacles half and half in color. So remember to step back and see which part is which. There's a lot of lines in this piece. Little outline on the eye too, and you can define the siphon a little more. Yeah, another tool I use sometimes, and maybe if you guys are going to keep doing these with me, you might want to get some paint pens. So I get these Posca paint pens. So they're still acrylic paint, but it makes it really easy to do the outlines because with the brush, it's kind of hard to get it even and it takes a lot longer. But with these paint pens, you can do the outlines just with a lot more control. And it's still acrylic paint, so it'll work really well with the medium. And yeah, if you use watercolors, I like to use an ink pen to do outlines as well. Just gives it a nice look. If you guys have any last questions before I have to turn this off, feel free to type them in. Got a few more minutes of recording time, so I'll just keep working on my outline. Okay, so that's all the painting instruction I have for you. So remember to take a picture of your finished piece and upload it to the Follow the Sun Art Club Facebook group. You can find that under my page or search for it. Or if you don't want to be in the group, you can also just comment with your picture. I love seeing what you guys create at the end because they always turn out so different, and that's the most beautiful part about this whole paint night process. So thank you guys so much for watching. Have a lovely rest of the evening and an awesome weekend. Yeah, staying home as usual. So I'll see you next week on Wednesday for Watercolor Wednesday, or on Friday. Take care. Goodbye.